Hello and welcome to Greatest Games Never Played, a Lantern Light Studios production. I'm Alex Fitzsimmons, joined by my co-host Reno Del Maro.
Alex, that intro music gets me hype. You know what? I'm just gonna come out and say it, man. I'm ready to take on this podcast, bro. I know what it entails. I'm ready to nail it. I want it. I want this podcast. I'm ready. I'm walking tall. I've been earning and burning, snapping necks and cashing checks. I want a Range Rover, bro. I want to get ass.
I wasn't expecting this one, Reno. I'm not even really sure what that is. But you don't need to explain it to me. I'm sure someone else gets it, and that's the important thing. Uh, but
Substitute podcast for Catalina wine mixer.
okay, we're dropping a Step Brothers reference
Oh
here. All
yeah,
right.
one of my
So,
favorites.
so what we do here, besides Reno's strange impersonations, is we're going to take a look at a moment in sports history, analyze it, look back on it, and say and discuss what would have happened had that moment gone a different way. So let's not waste any more time, Reno. Let's get right into it. Let's send it over to the one and only Taro Sujimoto.
Take it.
On July 8th in 2010, ESPN aired an hour-long special called The Decision. In front of almost 10 million fans, NBA superstar LeBron James announced he was leaving his hometown team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, after 7 years to pursue his career as a member of the Miami Heat. The decision had altered the free agency landscape and changed the way teams were built in the NBA. This move was the final piece in assembling a super team along with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. This superstar trio would lead their team to the NBA Finals for the next 4 seasons and bring 2 championships to Miami. But not everything was all right in LeBron's world. In spurning his hometown team, he had turned the city of his youth and early career against him. The way he announced the decision so publicly has widely been viewed as the actions of an egomaniac. The nice guy image and legacy of LeBron James would never be the same. What if the many suitors that LeBron had during the spring of 2010 caused him to make a different decision? What if James had stayed in Cleveland? The impact LeBron James has had on the NBA and sports would be forever recast in the decision Redux.
So that's our topic for the week there, Reno. What if LeBron James had made a different decision during the decision? So, well, what do you got to say about that? You excited for this one?
I am. I'm giddy like a little school child. All right, because listen, I admit I am a serf in the court of King James. All right, I love LeBron. I'm a huge LeBron fan, so I'm ready.
I know you're a big basketball fan too, so you got to bring them stats, you got to bring them facts, because I'm gonna need your support this time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'll bring some numbers. You want to start off, or you want me to go?
Yeah, I mean, I guess start it off from the beginning here. So
All right.
we know who. I just want to make sure we know who the characters are, the key players in this thing right here. We're looking at LeBron James, 2003 first overall pick at St. Vincent St. Mary's in Akron, Ohio. Goes to the hometown Cleveland Cavaliers, wins 2 MVPs in his first 7 years there, and then free agency hits. Right? And what happens for free agency?
Once free agency hits, you know what? He basically July 1st, 12:01 on the dot, 2010. He is now open for free agency, and they decide to do the program The Decision on ESPN, hosted by none other than Jim Gray, that weasel. But in order to get to the decision, you want to hit the numbers because we got to know why is this decision, why LeBron James? Why is he worthy of a whole program dedicated to his decision on where he's going to free agency? Has anyone
Yeah.
ever done this before him?
Who is this guy?
No, not that I know of, you know what I mean? Like who is he? I mean, now you see all these college kids like always like now like putting hats down. Now they all do a little mini decision. You know what I mean? To let people know where they're going to college out of high school. But LeBron, I mean, simply put, he's the best in the game today, and he's been the best in the game for quite a long time, probably since his rookie year. I mean, other than Kobe, LeBron's been synonymous as being the top player in the league. Some years, some other guys, put up numbers, get MVPs, but LeBron is the machine that runs every team he's on. So right now, he's in his 17th season in the NBA, currently with the Lakers. 35 years old, like you said, born in Akron, Ohio, played for St. Vincent, St. Mary. Crazy in high school, right? His freshman year, he went, he averaged 18 points a game, 6.2 rebounds, 3 assists, won a title. So that's the first of 3 state titles in 4 years that he got. Sophomore year, he upped his numbers to 25.3 points per game. He had 7.4 rebounds, 5.5 assists, shooting 58.4 from the field. Mind you, his sophomore and junior season while playing basketball, he's also playing football. He's a 2-time All-Ohio Division IV first-team wide receiver. His junior year, he has 52 catches, 1,000 yards, and 15 touchdowns. This dude is
So,
talented.
so are we saying we have a separate spinoff of this one here where LeBron
We
goes and joins
we could.
the NFL?
Yeah, oh my, I don't even want to get into it because I keep hearing him and the Cowboys, him playing
Uh,
tight end or wide receiver. But yeah, he broke 2 records that season. He was the first sophomore to be named as Mr. Basketball in Ohio, and also the first to be named on the USA Today All USA first team. And he played football both years while he was doing that. Basically, he's a 2-time All Ohio Division III first teamer. He's a 2-time All Ohio Division two first teamer, state tournament MVP 3 times in the 3 title wins, Mr. Basketball 3 times, USA Today Player of the Year. He's got accolades coming out of high school, 3 titles, insane. Like this kid, there's a reason why he was
First
the
overall
hype
pick.
on him. Yeah, he was King James. He was the one that was going to take the court. He's the heir apparent to his heirness himself, to Jordan, right?
Yeah, his
First
nickname.
overall.
He's a nickname. 100 nicknames, but one of them is the chosen one, right?
The chosen one. Yeah, it's insane. I mean, dude, he put up 30.4 points his senior year, 9.7 rebounds, 4.9 assists, shot 56 from field. He's ready. He's able to go right from high school. This was before they changed the rules in the NBA that you had to do a year of college. But he spent 11 years with the Cavs altogether. His first 7 there, left for the Heat for 4, went back to the Cavs for another 4 years, and now his last 2 years have been with the Lakers. Rookie of the year in 03-04, 16-time All-Star, 15-time All-NBA, 3-time All-Star Game MVP, 6 times All-Defensive. He also won the scoring title in 07-08, 4-time League MVP, back-to-back in 2009, 2010, again back-to-back in 12 and 13 with the Heat. His
You, you,
first time with the Cavs.
you know what my favorite stat here is when we're going over all this stuff right here
What's
is
that?
is 8 consecutive finals appearances.
8 straight title game appearances between 2011 and 18 between the
4 for
Heat
the
and the
Heat and
Cavs.
then 4 for the Cavs. So the guys goes to the Heat every year he's there. He makes the finals. Then he goes back to Cleveland, and every year he's there, he makes the finals.
Yeah,
You know,
three
winning 3 of them. So
three-time NBA champ, and he won his second year in Miami, and he went back to back with Miami. So he went back from 11-12 to 12-13 with Miami, and then again in 2016 with Cleveland. He's a 3-time NBA Finals MVP, Sports Illustrated Sports Person of the Year twice in 2012 and 2016. Some career numbers for you. He's played in 1,258 games. He averages 27.1 points per game, 7.4 rebounds, 7.4 assists. He shoots 50.4 from the field. He's 34.4 from 3-point range, and he's a 73.5% free throw shooter, which is good, but there's been better free throw shooters if I was to critique him.
so
Two
so
two
so
Olympic gold medals too,
2
man.
Olympic gold medals, yeah, and
Yeah.
1 bronze to go with that too. But
Mm,
I guess my one of my questions for you then here is I look at his position. He's listed as a power forward, a point guard, a small forward, and a shooting guard. What is going on?
He's 6'9", 250 pounds, runs like a cheetah, could play all 5 positions on the court. He's essentially a more athletic Magic Johnson. And Magic Johnson was 6'10", and
Mhm.
could play every position on the court, could defend every position on the court. He's a positionless player. He could run the point, which he mostly does. He could play power forward. He could stretch the floor, by shooting the 3. He could attack the basket. He could defend all the positions. He could do everything. I mean, he's a facilitator. He's a scorer. He dominates. This guy is probably the most dominant physical specimen in any sport of all time out of any athlete. I mean, it's hard to argue against it. I mean, he's the king for a reason, man. I know a lot of people dislike him. I know a lot of people try to discredit him, but
Now
he's
let's
great.
talk about that right there. People dislike him, and it usually all stems from the decision. Back
Yeah, the
to
decision,
the decision. This is what we're here for.
which
Is
wasn't even his decision. Like he didn't
well,
even come up with it.
he didn't come up with it, but he agreed to do this.
He
Um,
did, but it was
and,
for
and
a good cause.
so yeah, he went on an hour-long live show on ESPN on July 8th to speculate and then build up the hype and then announce where he was going. And of course, the famous "I'm taking my talents to South Beach," as he decided he would go to Miami and
Yep.
join Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade to form essentially what became known as the first player organized super team. The speculation is that these guys were planning this for a while. Um,
Yeah,
that
it's clear. That's evidently clear.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were planning it. Like, Stephen A. Smith had said it like weeks before they went there. He knew it was happening. And Stephen A. Smith's a guy, love him or hate him, the guy certainly has his connections inside the NBA. And the fact that he was saying weeks before that he knew what they were doing kind of lends there's some credence to that. These guys had orchestrated and been planning for probably a long time, so that when their free agent year came up, that they were going to go together. They were going to take less money to be able to sign and play together. These big three stars.
Yeah, I know, Dwayne Wade was re-signed with the Heat, and he took a team-friendly deal. LeBron came in and gave a discount deal so he could stay there. Chris Bosh probably got the biggest deal out of all of them. I could be mistaken about that, but I believe at the
He
time
had an identical contract to LeBron James.
to LeBron, yeah, so he basically took a little bit less probably too, but,
Yeah.
in hindsight, that might have been what he was worth at the time. Good player, but he wasn't on the level of LeBron or Dwayne Wade, but very good
Mhm.
player. I mean, look at the numbers too before LeBron leaves. So he spent 7 seasons with the Cavs. In year 4, he actually gets to an NBA final. So in his 4th year, he's in the finals. He gets there in 2007. They lose to the Spurs. They just get shellacked, swept across the board 4-0. Um, and I mean, I'm sure he's thinking, all right, well, I got to a championship game there. Like now we're going to build around it. But Cleveland didn't really do a great job of building around him. They got some pieces, but they didn't get any definitive pieces. Not a Dwayne Wade or a Chris Bosh, not like another top 2, top 3 tier player like you
Yeah.
see now in the NBA. They got a bunch of role players again. And not to like a caliber of like a Horace Grant or a Scottie Pippen going around Jordan. He's got, guys around like Anton Jameson and Mo Williams and St. Joe's alum Delonte West. I
Mhm.
mean, this guy was before he left, right? He's averaging 39 minutes a game, right? He wins his second consecutive MVP. He's got 7.3 total rebounds, 8.6 assists, 1.6 steals, 1 block per game. And he's doing 29.7 points per game that year, right? They finished 61-21 in the 2010 season, right?
Mhm.
So they beat Derrick Rose and the Bulls in the first round. They almost sweep them. It's 4-1. But then they get beat in the semis in the second round to the inevitable Eastern Conference champs that year, the Boston Celtics. And they got beat 4-2. They didn't take it to 7 games. They got handled. And then, as we know, that season, the Lakers went on to beat the Celtics in 7, and Kobe gets his 5th and final title of his career that year, and he went back to back. So Kobe won, 9 and 10.
Mhm. So, all right. So right there, I want to go back to the decision here then.
Mhm.
So he makes the decision then in this probably poorly conceived unveiling of where he's going. And he would admit that today that it was a little over the top. It didn't take into account the feelings of his hometown. Well, that's his hometown Ohio team, the Cleveland Cavaliers fans who had invested so much in him. And there was, fans burning their jerseys in the streets. The owners trashing them in a public letter, putting it on their website.
I've got
Calling
that
them.
letter if you want me to read some excerpts.
I mean, I think there's a lot of terrible things he said there.
I'll
But
just
yeah,
read a couple. It's crazy. It's really crazy. I mean, I'll just point a couple out that, as you know, our former hero who grew up in this very region that he deserted this evening is no longer a Cleveland Cavalier. This was announced with a several-day narcissistic self-promotion buildup culminating with a national TV special of his decision, unlike anything ever witnessed in the history of sports and probably the history of entertainment. Clearly, this is bitterly disappointing to all of us. That's one, right? But then he goes on to say to the fans, the good news is that the ownership team and the rest of the hardworking, loyal, and driven staff here of your hometown Cavaliers have never betrayed you nor never will betray you. Um,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
whoa,
he calls him a selfish, callous coward. He calls
cowardly betrayal.
Yeah, he calls
Um,
him disloyal,
oh,
former king. I mean, this is over the top, and
this might be the best one. I personally guarantee that the Cleveland Cavaliers will win an NBA championship before the self-titled former king wins one. You could take it to the bank.
so
Oh,
we look back on this and there was the decision in quotes, followed by the letter in quotes. This is a famous letter that came out here, and it drew attention from around the league and outside the league, with Jesse Jackson famously saying that Dan Gilbert was treating LeBron like one would a runaway slave. Like this is outrageous what Dan Gilbert did here to be talking
it
like this.
is absolutely egregious.
This
It's
is this
disgusting.
guy's the goddamn billionaire owner, the CEO of Quicken Loans. The guy's he owns Fathead, the company, and took the LeBron's wall graphic, lowered the price from 99.99 to 17.41. The year Benedict Arnold was born. What is wrong with this guy?
Oh, Jesus. Wow. I didn't realize the wall graphic. I've never heard that one. That's great.
Yeah,
That's a that's a great pull by you. Wow. No,
he is deranged. He's a
it's
deranged man.
disgusting. It's egregious. He's acting like a petulant child. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I get a fan of the
Yeah,
team, a loyal, like diehard, grew up in Cleveland fan of the team, loving LeBron, feeling like, he
feeling a little
betrayed
hurt. Yeah,
him.
I
But
get
this
it.
is an owner. This is a professional. This is a business professional. And I think it was like, I'm gonna cater to the fans by making them think I'm one of them. I'm so much. It has that feel to it, like I'm one of you. And to prove it, I'm just gonna shit all over this guy's life and legacy and who he is, and I'm gonna besmirch him. I mean, dude, he drug him through the mud in a way that, like, I can't believe he went back there. Like, you
Yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, I would have been like, "Yeah, you
I
better
would
kiss my ass and come back
I would
here."
agree. I would agree. That was crazy. So, all right. So, like, I don't know.
But you
You keep
better
hearing
kiss
this.
my ass on live TV in front of everybody. Kiss it.
Yeah, yeah. He's LeBron's the bigger man than me. That's for sure. That is I would hold that grudge for a long time.
Oh, I would have backhanded him in an alley somewhere. You know what I mean? I would have went Al Davis from last week on Lamar Hunt. You know what I mean? I would have just backhanded the shit out of him. It's crazy. I
So,
mean,
I'm gonna rein it in because I don't want to beat up on Deion Gilbert for an hour
yeah.
because I think we could.
You know
Um,
what? Fuck Dan Gilbert, just like fuck Lance Armstrong. Yeah.
There you go. So we got our big three. They've
Mhm.
all coordinated. These guys are all also from the same draft class. They were all 2003 top five picks.
Yeah.
LeBron first, Bosch fourth, and Dwayne Wade fifth, all in the 2003 draft. So I thought that was kind of an interesting little aside there. So these guys all weigh all their options, and they decide the Heat is the place where they can go win their championships. And that's what LeBron said. That's what they said at their press conferences. The plan was to come here and win multiple championships.
Yeah. Hey, I
Uh,
mean, you said it earlier. Like he sold it with some feeling though, and he said, In this fall, man, this is very tough. In this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach." So they were going there for titles. It was clear they were all trying to get titles.
yeah, no, he said, I feel like it's going to give me the best opportunity to win and to win for multiple years.
Yeah. Well,
So,
Wade won one with Shaq there a few years prior, and
yep.
so he wanted another one. He's got to think about his legacy. Bosch, coming from Toronto at the time, wasn't a very good team. He definitely wants, to get on a good team, play with some talent. And LeBron ultimately, when it comes down to, you've been playing with the team for 7 years, you got to a title game, you got to the finals, you got smoked, and then they don't do anything to build beyond that. You know what I mean? Like, how would you feel if you're him? You're probably thinking, man, I don't know, even if these guys could give me more money, they're not
Yeah,
giving
no.
me anyone to work with. I
Yeah,
want a
no.
title,
Yeah, exactly. He could have stayed there and won a bunch of MVPs and probably no titles is probably he was thinking in his head here at the time. And you know what? He's 25 at the time.
Yeah,
But,
Alex, you played
I
hockey growing up, right? You
yeah,
want to win. You don't like it. Players and fans think differently. Like fans want players to think like them. And I get that, and that's great when they do. Like, you rarely have those Brian Dawkins and stuff. Sorry, there's my Philly throw in, but you rarely have those guys. Like, most these guys wanna win at all costs. They want titles. That's what they're there for. They're there to make money and win titles. Like, they don't wanna stick around in a losing effort just to say, "Hey, man, I stuck with the whole team my whole life." You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
no, and
I'm
the fact that
loyal.
LeBron and Bosch and Wade all were willing to take less money to make this happen is an indication of what their clear desire was here. But so what happens in this decision here? There was choices. There was options. LeBron could have stayed in Cleveland. There was big rumors around Chicago. We heard big rumors around about the New York Knicks, the Los Angeles Clippers, the Nets, and the Raptors even.
Mhm.
So I think that when you start looking at that there and you look at what they were willing to take, and you look at what happened with the Heat, that team was basically those three guys and just signing veteran minimum players because the NBA has a soft salary cap, which is I don't know if you've looked at this thing. It's a nightmare. It is a nightmare. It makes no sense. I miss I want the NFL and the NHL caps where I understand them. They're hard caps because this NBA salary cap is a nightmare to deal with. It is luxury tax if you go over. There's all these different exceptions to allow you to go past the salary cap. There's mid-level exceptions where you're gonna have one a year that sign a player for a league just specifies an amount, and he can go over. You also have biannual exceptions. Okay, it can't be used in consecutive years, but it's basically a mid-level exception you can do every 2 years. You have Larry Bird exceptions, the Bird rule, where you have a qualifying veteran free agent, and you can pay him up to max salary for 3 years and that can go over the cap. You have early bird specials, and that's if it's to early bird exceptions. You have non-bird exemptions. You have minimum salary exemptions. You have traded player exemptions,
Yeah,
where a
it's a
trading team
clusterfuck.
can take 125% of their outgoing salary. So if they're over the cap, they can still make trades that leave them over the salary cap and take on 125% of their outgoing. So they can acquire more cap space when they're already over, as long as they're paying the luxury tax.
I'd rather deal with alien science
It,
than,
it,
trying to figure out the NBA cap.
and
Like,
And I feel like these 3 guys probably looked around, looked at the cap situations, were like, "What in the world do we even do? Like, maybe every team can sign us, or maybe no teams can sign us." They probably didn't even know. But what
well,
the Heat
Miami was the only one right away that dumped a lot of salary and was able to afford them right
Yep,
off the bat. That
and
probably made it a super easy choice in the fact that Wade was already there.
yep, and then you start bringing in guys like, Jerry Stackhouse and, Carlos Arroyo and Eddie
Mike
House and Jawan Howard, and these
Matt
veterans.
Miller,
I mean, Mike Miller made like
Mike Miller, that's what I meant.
he made decent money. Like he was the fourth highest guy on the team as far as what he was making. But they were paying these other guys like who they just brought in and league veteran minimums because they could go over the cap. But there's these salary cap exceptions and rules and ways to get around going over the salary cap.
They had a good set of role players on that team. I mean, they had Carlos Arroyo, Mike Bibby, Mario Chalmers. They got Eric Dampier. They Adonis Haslam played really well for
Uh,
them.
and
Jamar
and
Howard.
Haslam took less money to stay there as well. Actually, Haslam was
Yeah.
making roughly 7-8 million the year before. Ends up when they sign him, he's making about half that.
He saw
So
that storm coming. He wanted them titles, man. So he's like, oh yeah, you know what? Who cares? I'm gonna play, win championships. I'm gonna guarantee a position on this team. You know what I
yeah,
mean? They took Zadrunas Ilgauskas from Cleveland,
yep.
so he came with LeBron. Jamal McGlure, Mike Miller, like you said, Stackhouse, who was like
And these are
Stackhouse
all
and Juwan Howard were like towards the end of their run.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean?
because but they were available and they could sign for veteran minimums because they wanted to come
Mhm.
there and play with those guys.
Deep
So
bench.
I mean, whether it was a deep bench or not, it was a bench that could fit under the cap through all these exemptions they had, all these minimum players, all these minimum rules, these mid-level exemptions. They were able to make the salary. So when you start looking at like what his options were, what other teams could have done, it's hard to even figure out because what kind of exemptions would all those teams have used? You can look at a team like the Miami Heat's roster, and they're over the salary cap. They're I mean the salary cap that year was what was it? It was 58 million. They're running around 60 to high 60s, but they're able to do it because of all these veteran exemptions, and they're able to sign Dwayne Wade and have him as an exemption because he was a veteran, a qualified veteran free agent or whatever they are. Like the NBA salary cap's a nightmare and a mess. I I wish it was a hard cap, then I can make sense of this. So
Yeah.
when we start talking about these different options, different places he could have gone, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to dig too deep into how we would have made this work. I tried,
Just
and
assume every team could have signed
well,
him at somehow.
I know what I was doing. I looked at these rosters and I tried to make them as close to the salary cap as I could. I tried to make sure if I had to add players, it was veteran guys that this contracts they signed for kind of the money they signed here for the Heat. Those guys wanted to show up and play for the same team as LeBron. So I think that's something we have to talk about a little bit when we look forward as to what could have happened with LeBron going to other places. Is that the other teams would have had to do similar things? They would have gone over the cap, but that was kind of the deal when you signed these guys was you're going to go over the cap and you're going to fill your roster up with veterans who are willing to kind of take those exemption rules, get their money, but not really count against the salary cap in the same way.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you know what? Going back to the decision itself, it's funny because you were talking about how he drew such like intense criticism from everyone. I mean, analysts, executives, fans, former players, current players. I mean, dude, people shit on him left and right. You know what I mean? Like Dan Gilbert published the letter, which again just absolutely gross. Jordan and Magic Johnson also criticized him. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? For joining with the other, the big three and trying to win championships instead of being the man, as they say. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
This all being said, I understand what they're saying, but those two guys played on teams that I mean, essentially had big threes. Now they weren't player arranged in
They
the
were
same way.
homegrown big threes.
I mean, the Bulls went and had Dennis Rodman. That was a free agency pickup, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
Ron Harbor and Dennis Rodman. Yeah, and in the second go around when they won their second pair of three, they added Ron Harper and Dennis Rodman. So yeah, they definitely added to the team, but they almost like think about this, they replaced, Horace with Dennis Rodman, and then they got themselves a backup point guard or starting point guard depending on in Ron Harper.
I
You know what
I
I mean?
I guess
So
I guess my I guess my point here is that I understand what they're saying.
But they were
Jordan,
still big players. I mean, Scottie Pippen's one of the greatest players of all time. Horace
yeah,
Grant might not be, but at the time he was dominant,
but
dominant forward in this league. So they had a big
but they were.
three. I
But
agree.
I get what they're saying. They're saying, "Hey, I did it right. I stuck with my team. I was loyal. They built their team around me. I didn't go coordinating with my enemies because Michael never would have talked with his other stars of his league about
He
joining
wasn't
a
going to Detroit.
I mean, I mean, who's Michael talking to outside when he was still playing about, hey, we should coordinate and go do this? Because Michael would have viewed that as some kind of like anti-competitive, like buddy shit that I don't think Michael and Jordan ever would have played. That being said, the league's different. The players are different today.
Maybe not, but think about this though. I mean, they got Michael, from 84 to 89. And they got him players. I mean, 4 years, if he's drafted in 84, Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant were taken in 87. So they got him two dominant players to make a big three there
They
within
absolutely
4
did.
years.
But he wouldn't have coordinated with somebody playing on another team to make a team
No, I don't think
make a
so.
super team. And that's really what the knock here was
But
that
maybe he goes to the Knicks.
LeBron creates this super team, and like LeBron, Bosh, and Wade conspire to form this super team,
I
and
want to get back into that later, though. I want to get back in that a little bit about Michael because what if they don't end up hiring Phil? What if they continue to lose and they go into 7 seasons? Now Michael's in season 7, like LeBron, continuing to lose. Maybe he does start thinking about leaving.
yeah, but I don't think he would have conspired that way. I think he would have signed a free agent deal where he thought he maybe had a chance, but he wouldn't have said, "Hey, let's all get together and meet in secret and all sign free agents deals for less money on this team that can afford us." And also an interesting side note to that, when they decided to go to the Heat, they were essentially recruited to go to the Heat too, with Pat Riley,
True.
the president of the Heat at the time, meeting them. In fact, they say Pat Riley gave Chris Bosh his one of his championship rings. He pulled out a bag full of rings because it's Pat Riley just loaded up with rings, and he gave Chris Bosh one of them and said, "Give it back to me when you win one here."
Uh,
And
well,
Chris Bosh said he still hasn't given it back to him, so he still got Pat Riley's ring.
I would say the conspiring, I would agree with. I think the conspiring and the actual planning it out and coming up with a strategic way that these three could come together on one team and having like executives with them and former coaches and everything like that. Sure. Do I think Jordan would have been a part of that? No. But in free agency, say he leaves and goes to the Knicks. Now he's pairing up with, he's going to be with Patrick Ewing. He's going to
Mhm.
be back with Charles. oh my God, why am I forgetting his name? But Charles Oakley, his former teammate in Chicago that left when they drafted Horace Grant. So he's going to be back with Charles Oakley. Anthony Mason was there. John Starks. I mean, that would have been a super squad at the time. And like, think about any other team. He's probably not going to the Lakers at that time because Magic is still there. Or Magic might be coming. That might be when Magic got diagnosed and might have been like retiring. But he's not going to the Sixers to play with Sir Charles. He's probably going to the Knicks, and that's a super team. And
Mhm.
that team would have been dominant. I mean, just put Patrick Ewing, Charles Oakley, and Jordan on the same team. Holy shit. You know
So,
what I mean?
I would say this too. Back then, the salary cap was less. The players probably weren't willing to take quite as team friendly deals because they needed that money back then. Like nowadays, like we're looking at a cap that's so big. These guys get paid so much. So we talk about LeBron taking a discount. You're like, hey, he's still getting paid insane money, and he's got all the deals. Like really, Michael was the only guy who had like one of those outside basketball deals at that time. That was essentially
With
paying
Nike.
for him anyway. He was living for free. He didn't need that salary from the NBA. Um, and I feel like the players nowadays can do stuff like that. So I think that's another aspect of why the super teams are able to happen is the players are willing to say, "Yeah, I'll sign for less because I'm going to be fine no matter what here. I'm going to make big money no matter what."
So they still had 6 teams look at him. The crazy thing about the decision too, Alex, is it actually, raised money for charity. I mean, it was the telecast was set to broadcast from the Boys and Girls Club of Greenwich, Connecticut, which it did. It was the backdrop. Basically, the whole decision was a backdrop for a major fundraiser, for charitable purposes. And ESPN actually raised 2.5 mil for the Boys and Girls Club, and then they got an additional 3.5 mil that they raised on advertising revenue alone, which they also donated to other charities. So that's
No,
$6 million. It was
it's
a
not.
good
It's not nothing.
cause.
It's not nothing, and it's a good
Yeah.
cause.
And he might be
However,
unjustly being punished and ridiculed and
yeah,
criticized for this because the
I agree with
dragging
you.
out of teams. You know what
I
I mean?
agree with
But
you, and then that's what it was. It was if he would have done this a different way, and I think he acknowledged as much, and he obviously did because he was there was no decision when he went back to Cleveland. There was no decision announcement when he went to the LA Lakers later. I think he kind of knows, hey, I had my heart was in the right place. I just did this in a way that looks bad. That's all. And I
he
think
did a good thing,
I
but
think he acknowledges that today. Like where he's like, yeah, he's like, I don't regret the decision. I regret the way I unveiled it. I think that's kind of his issue with it now.
sure, like, how could you ever regret being a good person, a philanthropist, and raising money for a good cause? You know what I
And,
mean? You
and,
can't do
and, go,
that.
and going to
It
join
it
a team that he was successful and won MVPs on and won championships on. Like he doesn't have a whole lot to regret with that. Like,
no, maybe it just, like, rang a little bit arrogant and maybe
yeah,
leaving these teams on, but you know what? These are, again,
he's all,
professional organizations with professional business ownership, like, they need to stop. Like,
he's
take
also
their
a 25-year-old man who's still learning who he is. Like, LeBron today wouldn't do that. He's more grown, he's more mature. But at 25, I mean, we all do silly things. I think that's probably how he looks back on it now. He's like,
I'm
yeah, I wouldn't do it that way. I would still do the same thing. I just wouldn't do it with thumping my chest on an hour-long special and then doing the press conference where all three of them were out there walking around.
the
It
Heat
was
rally. Yeah, the Heat rally was
it,
bad too.
it was a lot. There was a lot going on there. It just didn't look good. It looked very self-aggrandizing and like just this like pinnacle of the athlete's ego. Uh,
True, but at the same time, would you rather him? I always think to myself, I'd rather him do something for a good cause, raise money, and not keep everybody on the hook. I mean, he became an unrestricted free agent, like I said, on July 1st, and he made a decision on July 8th. Wade and Bosch had made their decision to re-sign. Well, Wade re-signing with the Heat and Bosch signing with the Heat the night before.
mhm.
This guy could have drugged this thing all summer. You know what I mean? Like he could have really drug it out and really like raked everyone through the coals and try to get more money. And
Yeah,
essentially what he did
but it
is
wasn't about the money. It wasn't because clearly he took
yeah,
less. It wasn't about the
he
money.
took less. I'm saying I'd rather, I think these teams need to stop being so butthurt about like a guy spurning them for somebody else. That's the game.
That's
That
that,
is the game, man. You
That's
can't
that's the collective bargaining agreement you've set up. The players are not you don't own them. They can go. They're contractors. They can go where they want.
no.
That's
I
the
mean,
agreement they've all signed.
I'll
So
tell
they
you what,
don't be mad about that.
The crazy thing about it though is you said that like you couldn't have said that better because David Stern at the time was the commissioner. He like urged ESPN to cancel the show, and he urged former ESPN president John Skipper to cancel it because he was concerned that it would extend too much power to one player, which it
Mhm.
did.
It did.
Inevitably, eventually, he was right. It did. I mean, it was the most watched studio show in ESPN history with nearly
9
10
point
million people.
9.9, like it said, right? Watching
Yeah,
that.
it's crazy. Nearly 10 million people viewed it. And it's funny. It actually apparently came from the mind of Jim Gray, right?
Mhm. Well, I think they said it came from a fan, right?
Well, I guess a fan had talked to, I think Jim Gray actually approached him. So it might have been a fan that might have said something about it. Jim Gray, I don't know, got a hold of it. And he actually approached ESPN to do it and host it. He's a Hall of Fame broadcaster. He's interviewed everybody, the who's who of sports and politics. Jim Gray actually worked in Philly from 81 to 83 for Prism as a sports broadcaster and reporter for
You can't
the
you
Phillies and
can't
Sixers.
you can't help yourself.
Just letting you know. Yeah, but I can't listen. I can't stand Jim Gray. Super douchey. That Pete Rose interview at the All Century team announcement was disgusting. The only thing I like about Jim Gray is when Mike Tyson did the interview where he said, my defense is impregnable. I'll eat your children. You know what I mean? I'll fuck you till you love me or whatever. Like, that was
I
that
think
was the best.
uh, another episode, another episode.
Yeah, I love when Tyson said, "I eat your children." Like, the look on Jim Gray's face is classic. I
So
can't I can't stand Jim Gray. Though. He's
I do
annoying.
want to bring it back to one thing here
Yeah,
before
go.
we get too far ahead, and that's the super team stuff. Because since then we've seen other players kind of do this.
KD.
We saw Kevin Durant join the Golden State Warriors,
Mhm.
creating it was already a dominant team and just putting it on the top. And we saw the next year after that, we
Kawhi and
saw,
Paul George.
well, I was going to say we have DeMarcus Cousins taking that mid-level exception to join the Golden State Warriors. When they
Mhm.
started just packing teams. And also when Durant left Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City then went and got Carmelo Anthony and Paul George to go with Russell Westbrook in an attempt to kind of build their own big three.
Yep. Now Paul
He,
George is with Kawhi and LA
yeah,
Clippers. Kevin
18,
Durant's with Kyrie and New Jersey or
mhm.
Brooklyn. Bro, I said New Jersey. I had New Jersey at the time of this going down. Brooklyn. Yeah, there's a lot of super teams for him, man. You're not kidding. I
Yeah,
mean,
Carmelo going to Houston to join Harden and Chris Paul in 18-19.
mhm.
There was definitely or when LeBron went back to Cleveland, getting Kevin Love to come along to join him with Kyrie to have another big three in Cleveland. This has clearly become the norm in the NBA now, and it
Yeah,
really started with LeBron and Bosh and Wade here when they built their own team, and now you see all these superstars looking to knowing how important it is to have your supporting cast and your supporting cast to be stars also. You can't just be having just guys who just pass you the ball and hope you do it all. Like that's not the way you win in the NBA now. It's a star driven league, and really you can win with 3 stars.
yeah. You know what's crazy too? If you in 2010, before he left, he actually attempted to do this to a smaller degree, a very much lesser degree than what he did. Shaq was on that Cavs team. They
He was.
traded for Shaq in 2010
Now that being said,
from Phoenix.
Shaq was a shell of his former self.
Shaq the year before in Phoenix was averaging 17.9 a game and 9 rebounds. And then all of a sudden they trade for him
Hmm.
and he's averaging like 12 points and 5 rebounds. And then he just like really shit the bed throughout the playoffs. I mean, if Shaq is anywhere near like even a percentage more than what he was a shell. You're right. He was a shell of himself. But if he was even a little bit better, they probably beat Boston and play the Lakers. Now they're probably going to lose to that Lakers team because that Lakers team was stacked. I mean, they had Pau Gasol, they had Lamar Odom, Derek Fisher, you know what I mean? Kobe, of all, of course, Kobe. So, I mean, I still see the Lakers beating them, but Antoine Jameson, LeBron, Mo Williams, and Shaq, like, doesn't sound like a bad pairing, but yeah, it failed. So you want to go younger.
Antoine was also past his prime at that point too, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think so. He ended up sticking with Cleveland for another year or so after that. But yeah, I mean, he was at that point, I think, becoming a journeyman.
All right, so
Yeah.
I think we know the situation here. LeBron leaves, goes to Miami. We know he goes there for 4 years, wins his 2 championships, comes back to Cleveland, brings the championship home to Cleveland. and then he goes to LA. So I guess what we're here to talk about though is what happens in a situation where they make a different decision. So
Yeah.
I kind of want to kick it off to you. I want to know what you think happens in this situation. Well, what are the repercussions of it? I mean, how does it happen? How does it happen that he goes somewhere else?
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, let's go back to those teams. Like, so they're probably the six teams. Like, he's either staying in Cleveland, right, or going to the Heat, like we know, or he's going to one of the other four teams. Look at some of the finishes in that the year that he became a free agent. So the Knicks finished third in the Atlantic. They were 29-53, missed the playoffs. Coached by Mike D'Antoni, the famous Mike D'Antoni, coach Houston, coach the Phoenix Suns squad with with oh my God, why am I forgetting the point guard? Steve Nash, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But that team had that 2010 team for the Knicks had Tracy McGrady, Wilson Chandler, Danilo Gallinari, Al Harrington, David Lee, Darko Milicic, Nate Robinson. 20 shocking that they won 29-53. Feel like, man, they probably got McGrady at the end of his career. You know what I mean? But that looks like a pretty good squad, right? The following season, right? They end up going 42-40 and they finished second in the Atlantic instead. And they made the playoffs. They get knocked out by Boston. They're still coached by Mike D'Antoni. That got swept. And they traded for Carmelo that year in season. So they trade for Carmelo Anthony, but their big selling point to LeBron was Amari Stoudemire. That's who they brought in, the young Phoenix Suns power forward, Amari Stoudemire. They wanted to pair Amari up with LeBron, but it didn't happen. So they got Amari with Carmelo Anthony, Chauncey Billups, former Detroit Pistons player, Wilson Chandler still there, Raymond Felton, Danilo Gallinari. You know, they actually, funny enough, apparently they used James Gandolfini in a Tony Soprano video to pitch to LeBron to come to New York, and it went over like a lead balloon.
Yeah, I would
And
imagine so.
and yeah, like basically they heard like the next day they were basically told like, oh, there's no chance he's coming here. Like you're out already. So they got all pissed and they fought for a second meeting, which they never got with LeBron. They never even got it with Maverick Carter, who was his right hand. They end up getting with his agent, Leon Rose, but no one even, Leon Rose showed up, but that was it. I mean, but they were basically embarrassed out of the
All right.
entire process.
So I guess let's get right into this here. I want to know, how does he end up on the Knicks? So what kind of situation would have to happen to put LeBron James on the Knicks?
Well, I mean, I don't know the cap numbers. I apologize for that. You probably have more cap numbers on
I
that,
mean,
but
yeah,
I
I
think
got
the idea was that they would have paired him with Amari Stoudemire and then probably got Chauncey Billups to come in and add, like you said, a veteran minimum. So
I
Chauncey
mean,
runs the point.
Chauncey was making roughly 13 off the trade, so if he came there, he would have had 13 mil on the books there. So
That's a lot of money. So
a
you're
lot of
probably thinking you're looking at now you got they're basically taking in two free agents and Amari
money.
and LeBron. They're probably gonna have to pay LeBron more than what he took in
And
Heat.
also, like when they got Chauncey Billups, that was part of the Carmelo Anthony trade. So I don't know how you pull off just a Chauncey Billups without getting Carmelo as well. And I don't know how you get Carmelo, Chauncey, Stoudemire,
And
and
LeBron. Yeah.
how. So I know when I look at this, I go, well, you almost can't pull that. Come on, you can't
You
pull the
can't
Carmelo.
pull it off. Yeah. So
You- you-
Chauncey's not gonna be there. So it's
Yeah.
gonna be Amari and LeBron, then they're gonna have to build around them. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And they're gonna have to go at least get a point. So now you got, your small four, you got your three and your four.
You got
And now
Raymond
you got
Felton there as your point guard, I guess, right?
yeah, you're gonna have Raymond Felton. Maybe Chandler will be like your backup four or could play a little five. Gallinari will probably be like a stretch four there. They did bring in, I think, Timothy Mozgov, funny enough, who
Yeah,
ended up
that's center,
becoming
yeah.
LeBron's teammate later on. Maybe he gets a shot at being center. But yeah, I don't see it either. And I think the fact that they just like completely abysmally failed in the
Yeah.
first meeting, they were out.
All right. So let's run down this. You got Amari, you got LeBron, you got Felton, you got Mozgov, and who else did you have in there? You had Wilson.
So Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler. Yeah.
So,
So it would
so,
have been like Wilson Chandler would have been
so
a,
that's
a
that's your starting five right there. What's
yeah.
that? What kind of noise can that team even make?
Well, I mean, Amari and it makes less noise than the Heat. I mean, I really don't. I still don't see them beating Boston because
Yeah,
Boston was still a big three. Got to remember that too. Boston's big three. They had Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Kevin. What's it called? Oh my god,
Garnett.
Kevin Garnett. Yeah, I almost said Kevin Durant again. So yeah, Kevin Garnett. Yeah, I'm forgetting names. There's so many. You know, what I mean, I'm thinking of all the history of
We got a lot here.
sports. I'm like,
We got a lot rolling here.
yeah, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and then they had a good squad of people around them too. I still don't think Amari and LeBron are enough to beat them.
No, I
So
agree.
he's just basically he's going for money. He's going to say, hey, I'm a Nick. But this is when the Knicks have been a joke for a long time at this point. And I don't know if the Mike D'Antoni like full offense works. LeBron, he's a defensive player too. I don't know if it works. It didn't seem to work for like Carmelo when he came there, who was an offensive player. I don't see it working. Um, then you got the Nets, right? So the Nets finished dead last in the Atlantic. They went 12-70 in the LeBron free agency year in 2010.
Yeah, the
They had
fame was terrible.
they had three coaches. So Lawrence Frank went 0-16, fired. Then Tom Barese came in for 2 games and went 0-2. And then their final interim was Kiki Vandeweghe, who went 12-52. They had Rafer Alston at a point, Devin Harris, Yi Jianlin, who ended up being a bust. He was the Chinese small forward, power
So,
forward.
all right. So I want to go right at this then. So we're talking New Jersey Nets. They
Yeah,
have they're a dumpster fire the year before.
terrible.
Now, and what they have left over, they actually have some cap room here.
They
Uh,
do.
if they're going into free agency here, they have some cap room. So
Yep,
when they
they
made a
got Avery
push,
Johnson to coach them the
yeah,
next year.
so they could have gone here and pushed hard for LeBron. I mean, really, they could have pushed hard for all three if they had really pushed hard.
They could have. They also signed Darren Williams, who was like coming off like career year. You know what I mean? Like he
They,
was
they
playing really
traded
well.
for him in the middle of the season there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. They got Darren Williams that year, which they could have probably found a way to trade for him and pair him with LeBron. Derek Favors was on that team, Jordan Farmer, like, Brooke Lopez, pretty good player. Sasha Vujacic was on that team. I mean, they did have money, so you're right. I think they would have had to pair. I don't know if they could afford all three,
I can tell you that
but
they couldn't have gotten Darren Williams. That's for
they
sure.
would not have gotten Darren Williams. So Darren Williams would have been out. Yeah, if they would have gotten all three,
And they signed Travis Outlaw that year. They would not have been able to sign Travis Outlaw.
yeah, they would have had to do the same thing. It would have been basically either guys on the team that were, there that were good players, Brooke Lopez, Chris Humphries. Those guys would have to take a back seat and low pay to stay,
Yeah.
or they would have had to get them off the books if they were already paid up.
I mean, those guys weren't making a lot back then. Lopez was making 2. Chris Humphries was making around 3.
Yes, they might have been able to afford them.
Yeah,
I
they
like that
definitely
you
had
have the
that.
money numbers on those guys.
Yeah, no, I definitely did my best here to try and put together the teams I thought that the top 5 with some supporting cast with all these teams to see how they could have gone. And I'll just jump right in here. I got Farmer, Wade, James, Bosch, Lopez, the top 5 there.
Yeah.
With Humphreys, Morrow, and Terrence Williams coming off the bench. Some of their guys, they still have to keep their first round pick, Derek Favors, there because they never make the Darren Williams trade. They never trade Terrence Williams for Sasha, Vukovic
Vujacic.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got him. They also they would have had to waive Troy Murphy. They had Troy Murphy who was making a lot of money there too. They would have had to waive or trade this guy. There's no way he could have fit. They could have fit those big 3 with Troy Murphy there.
I love that you brought the money numbers. The money numbers are interesting because you're right. This is how they would have fit. I'm thinking in just like next. You're thinking next level with the money. I'm just thinking on how these
I was
teams would make
math
it
guy.
work.
I was
Yeah,
math guy this week.
you're going math stats.
Yeah,
I like
you
it.
were stats guy. I was math guy this week.
You're
And
good.
I tell you what, the New Jersey
Uh,
Nets with this lineup, I don't see him doing a whole. I don't see him as good as they're not even as good as the Heat.
yeah,
The
no.
supporting cast of Farmer and Lopez and Humphreys.
I like that supporting cast in Miami much better.
I do too, and I don't see how this team is superior to the Heat. And I mean, maybe they come out of this winning 1 championship in the 4 years there, but I think even that's a push. I don't see it happening.
I love it, man. You went algebra 2, trigonometry, broke it out.
Yeah, I did on this. I did, and I went for all the teams here. I think that again, with this team right here, I don't see a whole lot happening. I think this is a team that competes, makes the playoffs, maybe even goes on some deep runs. But there were some good teams that were winning championships those years or were competing with the Heat. It wasn't just like the Heat was just rolling everybody. I mean, they had to deal with I mean, they had to deal with the Mavericks, the Thunder, the Spurs. Like they had real opponents in front of them. Like this was not just them clearly being the best team. Even though they had those big three, they had real opponents in front of them. And if you didn't build a supporting cast, I don't see how the New Jersey Nets with that kind of lineup were going to beat those teams.
I agree with you. You know what? And then you look at the Clippers. Now the Clippers are interesting, but
They are.
you probably have even better numbers on this. The math numbers are going to be. This is where the math numbers are probably going to hurt the Clippers because
This
they had a
one,
lot of players.
this one
You know what I
hurt.
mean?
This one, it's there's a
It's
lot of sacrifice here.
they're
Like,
gonna have to cut a lot of people because in '09, so in 09-10, they finished third in the Pacific. They go 29-53, missed playoffs. Mike Dunleavy was coaching them. He gets fired. Kim Hughes stepped in at interim. They had Steve Blake, Razul Butler, at least for a period, Marcus Camby, Baron Davis, Drew Gooden, Eric Gordon, DeAndre Jordan, I think was a rookie or at least like a second year player. Chris Kaman and Sebastian Telfair at a point, right? The following year, they go 32-50. Vinny Del Negro now, who was coaching the Bulls the year before in 10, is now coaching the Clippers. And they got Eric Bledsoe. Again, Russell Butler, if he was there for a little bit. I think he got traded, though, then. Baron Davis, Eric Gordon, Blake Griffin now, rookie. DeAndre Jordan, Chris Kaman, Mo Williams coming from the Cavs, and Villanova's own Randy Foye.
I'm gonna be honest.
And
I had a tough team. I had a tough time with this team trying to put together a way that I can make them fit here. I don't
there's a
know.
lot of numbers here. I know Baron Davis is again a big deal, right? I mean, he had to have been.
Here's Baron Davis. Like the Clippers that year traded Baron Davis, right?
Oh, that's right. That's
So,
right.
so,
Oh, at
but,
some point, right? Before
but
the season or
no,
mid-season?
and mid-season. And here's the
Yeah.
problem with that, though. They traded him to Cleveland. If they found some way to sign LeBron James in LA, you think Cleveland's dealing with him? The owner's writing the letter. He's I mean, there's no way he's even dealing with his team.
Yeah,
He's
there's
not
no
trading.
way.
They got
He's not
because
taking
really,
Baron Davis for LeBron James. No one would ever do that, ever,
yeah,
ever.
yeah. They're just like, I'm not going to even deal with you. You're steal LeBron from us, and then you're going to try and trade with us. Go after yourself.
I
So
mean, it would.
the Clippers acquired Mo Williams and Jamario Moon from Cleveland for Baron Davis and a first round pick that ends up being Kyrie Irving. So like
Yeah,
this trade was great for Cleveland, really, if we're honest about it. Getting Baron Davis
absolutely.
and Kyrie Irving for Mo Williams, who was making a lot of money, and for Jamario Moon, it was a good deal. There's no way that Cleveland is doing that deal for him. They're just
And
not
Mo
going to do it.
Williams was a decent shooter, but
He
not
was, but he
not a
wasn't
very.
Baron Davis, and he's not Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see him paired up with Eric Gordon, Eric Bledsoe, rookie Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan. So DeAndre plays center, Blake Griffin plays power forward, and then you got LeBron playing the three, and then Gordon. Oh man, I mean that would have been an interesting team, but I don't. Yeah, no way it could have happened. There's too much money there. There's yeah, they would have cut a lot of people, and then again, I don't think they would have been able to afford to bring anyone else in with LeBron. They wouldn't have been able to bring in either Bosch or Wade. So no, I don't see that happening either.
For me, that's a deal breaker with it too. When I'm looking at these teams, I'm looking and going like, well, I want. There's no way after these guys conspired for that long, there's all of a sudden when it came down to it, they were willing to settle for being broken up. They wanted to go together, and I
Yeah,
think if you couldn't sign all three of them, I feel like that wasn't going to happen. And like really, I don't see how this happens. Like you're having to cut Baron Davis and he'd have a salary, in which case I don't know how you're playing. Chris Kaman's making a ton. I don't know how you're playing with him. There's a lot here that I don't know how you even begin to deal with. But in the off chance you could, I think that could have been a team that wins championships. You're talking, Kaman, Bosch, LeBron, Wade, throwing
DeAndre Jordan. Yeah.
Andre Jordan, Eric Gordon, Blake Griffin. I mean, those guys weren't making a lot, but I mean, Kaman and Baron Davis, they all were. And like, I just don't know how you put the team together. But if you do,
They
um,
make noise.
man, that is a team that
Oh
makes
yeah, yeah, they do.
financially how you could possibly do that. Like, I don't see any way that you could do it. For me, I look at that one and go, you know what? This is a pipe dream by the LA Clippers to even be calling LeBron James phone. Like,
Yeah, they were just doing due diligence, really. I
I
mean,
think they thought, hey, we're LA. Maybe you want to come play in LA? Like, and he was like, yeah, that sounds really cool. This
it's
isn't
like
gonna
a Howie Roseman move. Just I'm gonna call and see what they want, but I'm not really gonna do
Yeah,
anything.
they didn't have the chips to do it. So
Yeah,
let me look at some other teams here. Like I feel the same way about the Toronto Raptors, if I'm honest too. Like I
yeah.
don't know what you do with this team either.
Think
Uh,
they had it, but
and plus, is that a team is that enticing for free agents to go there? Like, is that I can't see LeBron, Bosh, and Wade being like Toronto. That's what we're
N
talking about.
no, I really wouldn't. I would say, maybe the years like Vince Carter was there in his prime, but they were well past that, and the only reason, you know, uh, that Kawhi went there later on is because, he was just trying to get out from the Spurs no matter what, and the Spurs got a deal they liked, you know what I mean, getting players back.
I mean, maybe Bosh sells it.
DeMar DeRozan,
Maybe Bosh sells it to Wade and James, where he's like, "Hey guys, you don't know Toronto. Toronto's a world class city, of course, it is, but I can
Oh,
see,
great city, yeah.
but it's still Canada. It's still not the prestige market that a New York, Chicago, and L.A. or I mean,
If
really,
that were the case,
or even
LeBron could
Miami.
have just sold Wade and Bosh on Cleveland somehow if they
Yes,
could have worked that out.
yeah, and good luck with that. But I
Yeah.
kind of look at this roster. I feel very similar to L.A., where I'm like, yeah, it could be nice. It couldn't be L.A. nice because I feel like they have to trade Turkoglu. They can't have him on this team. They can't re-sign Amir Johnson or sign Linus Kleza. I mean, they can't make trades for Stojakovic. I mean, they just can't do all the things that made them a decent team.
Yeah, Page and Turkoglu, good shooters there, yeah.
Yeah,
No, they
I
wouldn't
just
have been
can't
able to
see
do.
them. I can't see him dealing with all those things. I
They
mean,
wouldn't have been able to surround LeBron with those same shooters,
no, this
up
team
there.
would have probably stuck with Jose Calderon to go with LeBron, Wade, and Bosh here, but I don't see how they could have done anything at center. Their first round pick, Alabi, would have been starting at center. Like, who's that? So like,
Yeah.
and they would
Well,
have had to
then
fill this roster up with just the guys the Heat signed, the Juwan Howards, Jerry Stackhouses, and stuff like that. Would fill up most of this team. Like, I just don't see how this could have really happened and been pretty.
so here's a question for you then. Look at the Cavs, right? So the
Hmm.
Cavs, right, finished first in the Central, and they actually got the 1 seed overall in the East. They went 61-21. But then they lost to the 4th seeded Boston Celtics in the second round, 4-2. Now you're like, man, like Mike Brown, like didn't get that team back to the promised land. And they had Shaquille again in a trade. They had Danny Green, younger Danny Green, Zadrunas Agaskis, Anton Jameson, Anderson Varejao, Mo Williams, and Delonte West. I mean, it's not the sexiest team, but still, like any team with LeBron is going to be a contender to some degree.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree.
So they keep him. I mean, they were the worst. They were the second worst team in the league after he left. You know what I mean? They were 19-63, and that was Byron Scott's first year coming in as coach. Now they did trade for Baron Davis. So what if they keep LeBron and make that deal for Baron Davis work somehow? Then you're pairing LeBron with Baron Davis. I mean, does that really do anything for LeBron? I mean,
If
their argument was they could have given LeBron 30 million more than anyone on the max.
and if we're
And
honest,
that was why they
looking
want to keep
at the
him.
money, you couldn't have done Baron Davis.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? You know what they did? Their whole thing was their pitch to LeBron is they did a video of him in like the Family Guy characters, because apparently like LeBron loved Family Guy and that was like his favorite cartoon. So they made this like wholesome thing about him staying in town and being a hero and all that stuff. And then they played music from the Gladiator for him, which was you know, like Gladiator with Russell Crowe was like his favorite movie. So it got him all hyped. Like
I'm
that's
not
their
LeBron
pitch.
James. I'm not LeBron James, but I'm leaving just based on this pitch. Like I'm
Yeah,
on.
like, oh, thanks. You put me in Family Guy with Peter Griffin. And he's like giving me all these quips. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then you're gonna play some gladiator music. You better have Russell Crowe come in here and pitch to me like live. Yeah, the thing came down what it came down to, like you said, is the money didn't matter. If they would have been like, listen, we could give you the money, or we could take that money, we'll give you a good amount of money, and we'll take the rest of the money, and we will get you 2 players to go around you. Who do you want? You want Bosh? We'll get Bosh. We'll find a way to get Bosh. Like if they could have just made him feel like they were going to build that team around him, he stays. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't he? If he believed in ownership and
And for the
trusted it, he
record,
stays.
I think you're right. So let me ask you. Let me pose to you first. Well, you know what? Let me hear what you want to say, but I want to talk about Chicago before I get into Cleveland personally.
Yeah, yeah. No, we could go to Chicago right
Let's
away.
go to Chicago because I think Chicago's super interesting. I think these are the two teams to me that I go. These are the two interesting things: is Chicago and Cleveland. So let me hear what you got for Chicago.
Well, So Chicago, right? That season, then he became a free agent. They finished third in the Central. They were 41-41. They were 8th seed in the playoffs, and they lost to his Cavs. They lost to LeBron James coach Cavs, or LeBron James playing, Cavs 4-1. So they got LeBron lit them up in the first round of the playoffs and wiped Chicago out in 5 games, right? Vinny Del Negro was coaching them before he went to the Clippers the next year. But the players, they got D Rose, Luau Dang, Taj Gibson, Kirk Heinrich shooting, Lindsey Hunter, Brad Miller, Joakim Noah, and Hakeem Warwick and former Sixer John Salmons. You know what I mean? They were a good team. They needed a player of LeBron's ilk to get over the hump. Um, the year that LeBron ended up going to the Heat the next year in 2010-11 season, they jump up from 41-41 to 62-20. You know what I mean? They win the Central because obviously now LeBron's not there to contest them. They finish with the number 1 seed going to the playoffs, and then they get beat by LeBron's Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals 4-1. So he loses to LeBron again. Now Tom Thibodeau is coaching them. And now they've got D Rose. They went and got Carlos Boozer from Utah. They got Luau Dang still, Taj
Kyle,
Gibson,
Kyle Korver.
Kyle Korver, Keith Boggins, Rasul Butler came over, I think, in a trade too. Rasul's been all over the place, by the way. He's traded multiple times, I think, within like a 2-season period. But now imagine pairing D Rose, LeBron, Joakim Noah. You know what I mean? Like, and the whole thing with them was the Bulls actually had they didn't have the money quite, but there have been talks with D Wade because Dwayne Wade was from Chicago. It's where he was born and raised. Like that was his hometown. And there have been talks with Chicago, like kind of behind the scenes, like those Lamar Hunt back alley talks, you know what I mean? Where they were trying to clear roster space to get the big 3 in Chicago instead of Miami.
Yep.
And Wade was pushing for it. I mean, I guess they all would have had to sign pretty friendly deals,
I mean,
but really the Luau Dang numbers were huge. So they would have had to dump Luau Dang.
Yep, I agree.
Uh,
Luau Deng has to go. And for
yeah,
this,
they probably have to get rid of Warwick and James Johnson too. They're going to have to get a lot of trash off their books. Now, Taj Gibson, I believe, was on a real low class rookie deal.
he was actually James Johnson was really cheap at the time too. But
He was, yeah. They would have gotten rid of some. They would have cut some fat. Maybe they don't get Carlos Boozer though. They're not going to get him.
Yeah, no, he were paying him $14 million. They're not doing that.
So now and then they drafted Omar Asik that year. But you're looking at like if they could get Luau Dang to another team as a salary dump and they cut a couple other like guys making a little bit more money, you could probably still bring in Kyle Korver, off the bench as a 6-man shooting. You could probably still make some like low class trades or bring in some veteran guys again. Maybe they could pay
all right.
Mike Miller.
Hit me with your starting 5 then.
Starting 5. All right, if I'm doing that, LeBron's starting at the 3 in the small forward. Bosh is going to be your power forward, right? Dwayne Wade's going to be your shooting guard. Derrick Rose at the point. Joakim Noah at the center. Then you got Omar Asik as your backup center and Taj Gibson as your backup power forward. And then you got that would leave them with
Kyle
if
Korver,
they did this, it would leave them with like almost 7 million to sign 8 veterans.
Mm-hmm.
8 veterans. So they could have done that they would have totaled 61 million for their salary. They would have had almost 7 million to sign 8 veterans, which I think they could have done.
If you were signing veterans at league minimum, at the vet minimum, like we were talking about earlier, you can do this forever. You can just drop as many veterans on there for minimum as you want.
Yeah, and basically LeBron, Chris Bosh, and Wade all take around 14.5 mil a year. And Derrick Rose was still on a rookie deal, and so was Noah. So it works. They just have to get rid of Luau Dang and maybe a couple other players.
Luau Dang was the only blocking because that's my starting 5 here. I look at this thing. My team looks almost just like yours here. I would say you have to get rid of Dang. So I guess the question then becomes this roster. What do they do? Like, how good is this team?
They're winning championships right away. Right away. With D Rose run the point.
That's his MVP year too. Like
and they probably gave it honestly. Well, LeBron should have won MVP that year, really. I mean, he actually had better numbers. I think the hate coming off of
Maybe.
the
Tell you what,
decision kind of
that's a
pushed
that's a good
voters.
problem to have if you're Chicago right there. Like, you're like, "Oh, we have these 2 guys, we can't hardly decide who's the MVP here."
Two
That's a
playing MVP
rough
level, and
problem
then
to have.
Dwayne Wade.
Yeah, and
Who
Chris
could've
Bosh
been
and
yeah,
Noah.
yeah, there's potentially 4 out of 5 of those guys are all in the MVP race. That's insane. That's
So
insane.
that team comes in, right away, they're winning championships.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
Also, I'd like to point out that, the next year, the Bulls drafted Jimmy Butler with the last pick of the first round, which they would have again. They'd pick Jimmy Butler again. They would be able to add Jimmy Butler the next year.
Yep, that would have been just insane. So now basically you're gonna have Jimmy Butler probably as your 6th man, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Or you could have found a way to just, maybe move Chris Bosh, maybe to starting center with Noah coming backing him up or something like that. I mean, Bosh was what, 6'10", 6'11". He was more of a stretch 4. He wasn't like a dominant defender. He could play a little bit of defense, but he wasn't a dominant defender. He wasn't like a, back to the glass guy. So I don't think it would have worked. But, I mean, still, like, having Jimmy coming off the bench, though, which he probably would have on that team
Yep,
as your 6th man would have been
yep.
insane. That
So, yeah,
team would have been just not like, no one would have been able to stop them.
and I feel the same
No.
way. I look at this team, I'm going down the thing, like, the only problem you have here is that Rose, hurts his knee, but really, does Rose hurt his knee in a different situation like that? He passes the ball. It's a fluke thing. He's in a different situation. I bet he never tears his ACL in this situation.
Oh, no, because you know what? That was a year later, so it would have happened in year 2, and I don't think it because they would have been playing the Sixers again because the Sixers were a perennial 8th seed,
Yep.
and I think they would have been up so high on the Sixers,
Yeah,
y you
they're
know
not. It's a freak situation that all the elements have to play out right. If we change one thing, the butterfly effect tells us he's not tearing his ACL, and we've changed a lot more than one thing here. I don't
Tell
see
you
Rose
what,
tearing his ACL that year.
Al, let's do this then. Let's do it. What do you have happening? What do you have happening? What is the final?
I literally have them winning the championship the first year. We'll give Rose the MVP. Why not?
So all 3 go to the Bulls. You got all 3 going to the
All
Bulls.
3 going to the Bulls. And then I got Rose is gonna resign the next year for the same as, LeBron and Bosh. He's getting the same kind of money. They're gonna Jimmy Butler's gonna fall to him, so that they're I mean, it's really these top 5 guys with now Jimmy Butler making a little bit of money on the bench and probably Kyle Korver for 1 more year here. But there's not a lot of bench here. But that team is gonna repeat again. They're gonna win the championship again. LeBron's gonna take the MVP. I got him going and winning the next 2 years. I got him doing a four-peat. They're winning 4 in a row. That team's that good. That
Yeah.
team's that good. And really, LeBron probably wins the MVP those 3 years there too. He probably does. He's probably a 3-time MVP to go with his first 2 that he had in Cleveland. So he's now a 5-time MVP with 4 rings. Now the problem here becomes after 4 years, like they can't keep this team together. They're not gonna be able to do that. Like there's too many big pieces. You're gonna have a breakup. So what you got here going on is LeBron James is gonna leave, but LeBron James wants to keep that party going. You know he does. So he's gonna look around. LeBron James, familiar with the super team now, is gonna look over the Golden State Warriors, and the Golden State Warriors are gonna decide, you know what? We don't need Klay Thompson. We're gonna waive David Lee too. Let's get LeBron in here. So we're gonna drop a lineup of Curry, Iguodala, LBJ, Draymond Green, Andrew Bogut at center, and LeBron James continues to tear the league up, winning an additional 5 championships there for 9 consecutive championships, securing his place as the best of all time.
Wow. I mean, you listen, I will say this. You and I aren't going off the mark too much, except I got in a what I would consider a more realistic position.
You don't think they could have the Golden State Warriors? I mean, they went after Durant. Now, if LeBron's
Oh,
available,
no, no. I think they could have. And I think that all of that, like, I'll put it to you this way. I love it. I love that dream scenario. I think if he goes to Chicago with the big 3, oh yeah, they're murdering it, and then he's gonna find another super team, right? He's probably
yeah,
you got him not going back to Cleveland. I have a situation. I got a similar path, but maybe to a lesser degree. I mean, I would say this. I think in the end, Bosh and Wade end up teaming up in Miami the day before LeBron does the decision. And without telling them, you know what? LeBron, all of a sudden, somebody gets in his ear and he has a change of heart. Because you know what? He did show up to Chicago in some MJs. You know what I mean? He did show up in some Jordans there. And maybe somebody makes a last minute call and he's like, ooh, LeBron decides that he's not going, not only going to follow in his Ernest's shoes, but instead he's going to go to Chicago alone without Wade and Bosh. You know what I
Oh,
mean? He wants to do what Michael could never do. He wants to win 4 NBA titles in a row, which he's going to do, right? So Chicago will bring in LeBron's, former teammate in Cleveland, Carlos Boozer, because Carlos Boozer played with him for a year in 2004. They're going to bring Carlos Boozer in still. They're going to bring in LeBron, and then they're going to get a handful of shooters and players like Mike Miller, Corver, maybe Stackhouse, et cetera, to round out, their bench and their starting five, right? So I got a Joakim Noah at center, Boozer at power forward, Luol Deng stays on the team at the three. But listen to this: LeBron moves to the 2 guard, just
oh
like his
shit!
hero AI and Michael, and he
Hero
moves
AI.
to the 2 guard. Oh yeah, oh LeBron loves himself AI, right? He loves AI.
This is
Love,
this is Reno loving AI.
he loves AI. No, he loves AI. He called AI the pound for pound the toughest SOB in basketball.
I mean, that's hard to argue.
He moves to the 2 guard like Michael, right? Derrick Rose plays point guard, and then you still have Gibson and Asic on the team, right? You round out the team with some other shooters, right? LeBron then focuses less on running the point with D Rose there to distribute. You know what I mean? He don't need to do that. So maybe his assists will drop to like 5.8 instead of like 7.9, right? But he's still a rebounding monster at 8.1 per game, you know what I mean, per season. But his points go up from 27 a game to 30.
Mm,
Now he's scoring at will, right? D Rose never suffers that knee injury against Philly in game one with a minute 22 left because Chicago, they build up such a lead that those dudes are sitting on the bench drinking Gatorade,
yep.
with 5 minutes left in that game. So guess what? D Rose never gets hurt. He's never he's never hampered and sidelined by that major injury, right? So LeBron signs initially for 4 years at max value, and he gets a 5th-year option with Chicago, right? They win 5 straight titles. 5, right? 5 straight titles.
Mm.
Chicago
I mean, I see
continues
it.
to build around him and D Rose, right? Because like you said, that Reinsdorf family, that team, they've got the heir apparent. You know what I mean? They got the next Michael Jordan, right? So they're gonna draft correctly, like you said, they're gonna get Jimmy in the
Mhm.
next year. So now they're pairing Jimmy Butler is gonna play the 3. You know what I mean? Maybe they could shed Luol Deng. So now you got Butler to go in with Boozer, Noah, LeBron, and Rose, right? So now they're going to build that team in free agency, trades, all that stuff, right? In that time, LeBron would have beat in order of NBA in the 5 NBA championships. He beats Dallas. He beats Oklahoma City. He beats the Spurs twice back to back. And then he beats a young Golden State Warriors team, right? For
Oh,
his 5th championship, beats him, right? And then you know what he does? He
does it
says, "You know what? I'm going to leave Titletown, Chicago, and I'm going to, because I've done it. I basically won 5 titles straight. Jordan, Bird, Magic, none of them have done this. You know what I mean? I'm going to go reconcile with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and
Mm,
I'm going to win my 6th straight title." Right. And the first one for the state of Cleveland. He does go back to Cleveland and he beats the Warriors again in 2016,
okay.
tying Jordan for 6 NBA titles. Right. So now, you're thinking, all right, so then he stays in Cleveland for a couple more years. He loses back-to-back NBA finals though, right? So they lose to Golden State now in
That's the world we
2017.
live in then. So once he leaves there, you basically have him living in our world now where he wins the championship and
He's living in our world. He's won 6 straight titles. He's beaten Golden State twice. And now he loses back to Golden State. That Golden State dynasty's coming alive. So LeBron goes 2-2 against them in NBA finals. But he wins 6. So now he's 6-3 in 9 title games. You know what I mean? He ends up doing the same thing he does. He leaves for the lap of luxury, the Hollywood glitz and glamour in LA, like he inevitably was going to do, like he did in real life. But dude, he still reaches those 8 straight NBA finals and he wins 6 of them.
mm,
Um, his scoring would have ultimately increased in his time in Chicago based on the style of play that they're going to build around him and him being a 2 card, right? And he would have gone on to win, the NBA Finals MVP 6 times to tie
mhm,
Michael once again, right? So with the same amount of championships and finals MVPs as Jordan by the time 2016 rolls around, and the potential of more league MVPs due to his increase in scoring and the fact that he should have his third MVP in a row in 2010-11 when Derrick Rose got it, but he got shit on because of the voting, because of the decision. You know what I mean? Um, LeBron could have surpassed Jordan's 5 league MVP titles. You know what I mean? And the dominant numbers and records that LeBron already holds over Jordan between, in season and playoffs, LeBron is undoubtedly the GOAT. He's the GOAT. He
So
surpasses
we
Jordan.
both have Chicago as the key to LeBron becoming the greatest of all time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
I think
I've got to win in
he
9, you've got to win in 6. And the thing about it, like I said, when I wrote that down, I looked at the playoffs and I was like, 9 championships in a row, that's insane. But when you think about it, this guy went to 8 with Cleveland and Miami. This team is far superior, and I have him going to Golden State.
oh,
Again,
yeah.
these are far superior teams. Really, him winning 9 is, of course, he wins 9.
If that would have happened in your scenario, absolutely. If all 3 of them would have went to Chicago, I could see your scenario playing out. It would have been insane. That
Yeah,
he would have been, I mean, what would have been the asterisks on him? Oh, well, he went and he
he
built
did
super teams to win.
the best teams of all time. That's all.
He still
But
would have been the best
yeah, he
player
did.
on any of those teams,
Yep.
hands down. Still the best player.
All right. So right there, we've established Chicago was the key. That he made a mistake by not going to Chicago.
Yeah, I got some fun numbers for you too, just because we threw out both of us threw out that he is undoubtedly the GOAT. He's
Yeah.
the greatest of all time in both scenarios, right? Regardless of how it happened, he wins either as many championships as Jordan or more. You have him winning more, I have him winning the same amount, but the same amount along with all his other numbers, he surpasses Jordan. I mean, look at some numbers between them, right? So LeBron played in 1,258 games. Jordan played in 1,072. LeBron has him in points by 34,087 to 32,292. This is in season, of course. He's out rebounded Jordan with over 9,000 rebounds. Jordan had 6,600. He's out assisted Jordan with 92, almost 9,300 assists. Jordan had 5,600. He's got less steals than Jordan, but he's not far off. By the time his career is over, he's probably going to surpass Jordan in steals. He's got, probably like 60 more blocks than Jordan at 951 to 893. He has more turnovers. Jordan didn't turn over the ball as much, and he's also logged a lot more minutes. But then it gets a little deeper, right? We look at the playoff numbers, right? In your scenario, LeBron would have played, in even more
Mhm.
playoff games because he never goes to LA where he had that down season in LA.
Yeah.
So he would have probably played even more. But LeBron to Jordan, 239 playoff games to 179. So LeBron's got him on there. LeBron has almost 7,000 points scored in the playoffs. Jordan has almost 6,000. So he has like, almost 1,000 points more than Jordan. He's got 2,122 rebounds to Jordan's 1,152. He's got 1,687 assists to Jordan's 1,022. He's got more steals at 419 than Jordan's 376. More blocks, more
Mhm.
turnovers, but more minutes. Ultimately, the way we know history as it is, Jordan owns some accolades over him. So Jordan has 6 titles and 6 trips. LeBron has 3 and 9. Jordan has 5 MVPs. LeBron has 4. Jordan has 6 final MVPs. LeBron has 3 in the 3 that he won. Jordan has 11 All NBA, but LeBron has 15 All NBA, right? Jordan had 9 All Defensive Team, but you know what? LeBron goes to a Tom Thibodeau coach Chicago like you had. He had 6. He has 6 now. That Tom Thibodeau teams were known for their defense, right? So now you're probably he's looking at 10, all defense, because he's probably going to get all defense every year he's with Chicago. Jordan made 14 All-Star games. LeBron made 16. Where Jordan really gets them, Jordan had 10 scoring titles. LeBron
Yeah.
had 1. But in our Chicago scenario, I know my Chicago scenario in that case, LeBron is putting up more points. So it's possible he wins more scoring titles.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
You moved him to the shooting guard, so yeah.
yeah, I
Um,
moved to shooting guard. He's going crazy. You know
so
what I mean?
you essentially, we both agree that. But I think the key last team we want to go over before we start wrapping this up, though, is what happens if he stayed in Cleveland? Tell me what happened.
I mean, if he stays in Cleveland, I think they were foolish. They were arrogant. I don't see them building around him. I
Mm.
think he stays there with the money. Maybe they try to bring a couple guys in off of trades and piece it. Maybe inevitably they find a way to get Carmelo out there with him, and maybe him and Carmelo can make a little bit of noise just because of this. I mean, the sheer scoring. But ultimately, I think his career suffers if he stays in Cleveland at that point because I think I mean, they were kind of blind to the fact that they didn't have a good enough team. And I think that they thought they did, and that they just had to keep LeBron by paying him.
Yep.
And that was their folly. You know what I mean? That was their fallacy there is doing that.
So I agree with you. I think that I think essentially LeBron staying is the death of the super team. I think because he doesn't set the precedent for everyone else going forward. So that's the big change that we don't have the super teams.
Huge impact. Yeah.
But
I
they would have.
mean,
But you're right. They would have to pay. They have to pay LeBron like Kobe when he have to get like 23, 24 million a year. Like
yep.
so right away, if he's staying there, he's getting that money. So then they're having to probably re-sign Shaq for vet minimum. They can't make the Baron Davis deal, which means Kyrie Irving never shows up. I mean, you're looking at like a lineup, even in year one of like, I mean, it's not pretty right away. You're looking at Mo Williams at the one,
Ugh.
Daniel Gibson at the shooting guard, LeBron three, Jamison four, and like Vareo and Shaq splitting time at
Yeah,
five.
yeah, Varejao and Shaq.
And
Ugh.
I'm like, that's what you sweetened them up to get here for. Like, there's no way that they'll make the playoffs because
And I
LeBron.
think Shaq left for Boston too, didn't he?
Yeah, but
Uh,
he left when LeBron left, so
yeah,
he probably would have come around for another year at vet minimum to take another shot with LeBron.
but his
So
career was dwindling
yeah,
down.
yeah, I
So,
mean, he's not a player. Like he's not a difference maker at this point.
so
Uh,
in these scenarios, what's the biggest impact? Who
well,
is this
well,
impact?
let me just real quick finish up what happens with Cleveland here. So LeBron's salary is it's going to be hard to sign free agents, but LeBron's too good for them to get the draft picks they need. So what's going to happen here is they're going to just be signing guys. They're going to have like Durant's probably going to take an MVP away from him at one of these points here. Jameson's going to eventually leave. Williams and Varejao are declining each year to year. They're going to scrape into the playoffs. I got San Antonio taking a fifth and sixth championship here.
Yeah,
Um, I think what happens 13, 14, they decided to take a big shot. They had Josh Smith and Dwight Howard, and even that's not enough for this team to win.
yeah.
That's still, I mean, that's the year I got the Spurs winning their sixth championship.
They
Uh,
never get Kyrie.
they never get Kyrie. They're not going to get Anthony Bennett. They're going to take Archie Goodwin. You look at the drafts and start figuring out where they're going to go. I think that's probably where they end up is those kind of players.
Might be a
LeBron,
good thing that they don't get Anthony Bennett.
yeah, but LeBron re-ups again in 14, 15, probably for even more money, probably 25. And around that time, the Golden State Warriors are going to build their team. Not a super team though, because Golden State built their team for the most part before Kevin Durant arrived through the draft.
Yeah,
So in this scenario, the death of the super team here, Durant's not going to join them because the precedent has not been set to go chasing the championships. But Golden State, as they are without Durant, is still going to be dominant. We've seen that
oh,
already.
the shooting, and I mean, they
Yeah.
still had a big three.
So
You know what I mean?
essentially,
Still won with that big three.
what I've got here is I've got him staying in Cleveland and maybe winning an MVP. That's it. Like ultimately, I think that when we look at this scenario right here, like these Cleveland fans, they wanted this. They wanted LeBron to stay, and really, LeBron leaving was the best thing that happened. The best possible situation was for LeBron to leave, go to Miami for 4 years, let that team be bad, get the picks, get the players. So when LeBron shows back up, they've got guys like Kyrie. So when he
And they
returns,
surround him.
and then he can lure Kevin Lowe along, and then I mean, the worst that could have happened is LeBron could have stayed there. He would have made a lot of money, not won the MVPs, not won the chips. I think the problem here is a lot of Ohio players leave very unceremoniously. I know we've seen Carson Palmer, we've seen the Cleveland Browns recently, and even in hockey with the Columbus lost Bobrovsky and Panarin. So I feel like there's a fan base here that is just used to players leaving. I think they should really take a minute here and just appreciate that. Their hometown kid delivered a championship for them, and maybe just
Yeah,
appreciate the fact that the best case scenario happened for them was him leaving and coming back. Like
him leaving was the best thing to happen to him because they might
best
not
thing
won
that
anything if he
I'm
didn't
like,
leave.
yeah, they were going to win nothing if he stayed, and I think that that's a little that's the way I like to wrap up my Cleveland scenario. There is to recognize that the best thing that happened
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
Cleveland was him
strangely
leaving.
enough. Yeah, strangely enough. So in your scenario though, What's the biggest impact?
And him staying or him, or am I picking a team?
You could, I guess, picking him going to Chicago with the big 3, like, what's an impact, you know what I mean?
Impact, of course, is LeBron James becoming the best player of all time, the GOAT. Well,
That's
and
what
winning
I
9
have.
chips. Like, I mean, that's tough to beat that. His legacy, while it's one of the greatest of all times, for him to lock up the greatest of all time is a game changer in his legacy.
That's what I have. I mean, he's in my scenario, he's forming a different big 3, but he wins more titles and he stamps himself as the greatest of all time. That's my biggest impact. Most affected, I would say, uh, I think the players, obviously, the empowerment of players were the most affected by him leaving.
Yeah,
I think, like you said, the KDs, the Kawhi, Paul George, Carmelo, all them, they all make power plays and trades or free agency to form these different super teams to win. I mean, really, the the other thing is the fans. The fans, affect everything's affected. Maybe the GOAT legacy for him and status is affected by him forming these teams. I mean, really, in our scenarios, he wins more, so he would have been the greatest. But in real life now, a lot of people don't consider him the greatest. You know what I mean?
yeah. I think they acknowledge he's one of the greats, but you're right. It's
He's
he
definitely top 3.
Yeah. So I guess in my situation, I look for whose legacies hurt the most, and I would say it's also LeBron. It's when I have him staying in Cleveland. Like his legacy is, I mean, he's a 3-time MVP with no championship rings. If he stays in Cleveland the whole time, I think his legacy's hurt the most by staying. His legacy is blown up the most by going to Chicago, and I have him falling on both sides of the coin in this one.
Yeah, and in my scenario, him going to Chicago and forming another big 3. I mean, who's hurt the most? I think Wade. He ends up only winning 1 title. If they don't pair up, if he doesn't get LeBron, they only end up winning 1. Wade only wins 1 title for his career. He'll still be a great player, but Wade in the Heat organization, that would have been a massive failure for them had he spurned them. Jordan, because I think LeBron ends up surpassing him. Jordan's
Oh, yeah,
legacy
there you go.
now
Good
is
one.
diminished.
That's a good
You
one. I
know?
like that.
Yeah, Jordan's legacy's diminished. Jordan's now dropped down to the 2nd
Yeah.
best player of all time. I think Golden State gets diminished a little bit too because essentially instead of going, 2 and what they go, 2 out of 3 against him, now they're 2 and 2. Now instead of having 3 titles, they have 2.
They went.
And
Golden State went 3-4 against the Cavs.
that's what I meant. They won 3 out of their
3 out
4
of 4,
against
yeah.
the Cavs. That's right. They played them all 4 when they won. That's right. Oh, and then they lost to Toronto. But yeah, now they go 2 and 2 instead of 3 and 4. Um, and they split with them. And I think, they're still a dynasty and they're still a great team, but they're, less impactful going 2 and 2 instead of 3 and 4 like they did against them. Helped, whose legacies helped LeBron, of course, in his scenario, he's helped. The Bulls, I mean, Jesus, now you're talking about they are literally the greatest dynasty of all times. It's almost like they went from Jordan to LeBron and they're winning championships. It's kind of like the Green Bay Packers had Favre for all those years and were winning, and then they got Aaron Rodgers and they won.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
it's like that franchise just continues to win. And then Derrick Rose. I think Derrick Rose is doing it himself. Yeah, I mean,
Alright, so I gotta stop you here because we gotta get some plugs done before we get to our final thoughts on this. Reno, hit me with them plugs and shout outs, yo.
all right, all right. So for those of you out there who'd like to support us, you could go to patreon.com/Lanternlight Studios and support not only our show, but you could support our game development projects and other Lantern Light podcasts, such as Game Johns and Screen Johns. As always, thank you to our current patrons and a special thank you to the Russell James John support group patrons. You guys are awesome. We love you. Thank you for everything that you do. If you'd like to support just this show, you could do that by going to glow.fm/GGNP. And let me say thank you in advance for all the love and support you guys show us and continue to follow us. Thanks
Thank
to
you.
Luke. Yep, absolutely. Thanks to Luke Mullet for our theme music. I fucking love it. I just
That's
like,
good.
dude, I want to ram through a wall. I want to take my claymore out. We'd like to thank Lantern Light Studios for allowing us to do this podcast. Without their support, none of this would be possible at all. So thank you guys. We'd like to also thank our producer, Anthony Z. Zacola, for producing the show
Good
and
job,
for
good job.
everything he does for us, both on and off the air. I mean, the contributions, the ideas, everything like that. He's amazing. So thank you, Anthony. Thank you to our awesome audio engineer, Maria Lubanovic. You're the
You,
best,
Maria.
kicking ass, making us sound great, cutting out all the fat that we throw out there on there in the editing room for you. So thank you. You could you could reach me and Alex by going to our website, ggmpodcast.com, for show news and notes. You could also follow the show on Twitter at GGNP Podcast, or you can follow Alex at AlexFitz44, or me at the Kid Reno, Kid spelled with two D's. That's on Twitter, of course. Or you can follow me on Instagram, same thing, the Kid Reno with two D's. Hit us up. Let us know what you think of the show. Give us a rating, a review. It goes a long way. We really want to know what we could do better, more shows that we could do for you, any sports moments you'd like us to talk about. Great ideas from you guys. You could also visit lanternlightstudios.com for more information about our show and the other amazing podcasts. Our fellow podcast, Game Johns with Mitch, Jack, and Riley, talks about games, gaming industry, all things entertainment like that. Screen Johns with Savannah and Maria, awesome show, talks about television and movies and highlights them. So we love these guys. Highly recommend you check them out if you haven't already. And if you like our podcast and have enjoyed this episode, we kindly ask you to give us that 5-star rating and leave a good review. And maybe we'll give you a shout out if you have a really kick ass review or something like that. It'd be awesome. Goes a long way for us to try to improve the show and grow it for you guys. So thank you for tuning in. We love you. Thank you.
All right, yeah, that's a good point there. Let's get some shout outs going. I like that. But yeah, so we gotta get back to this. What are the final thoughts on the subject? What comes to mind when you think LeBron James?
I think of a guy who, in the end of his career, he's going to have incredible, incredible numbers, just natural numbers that came. A guy that put his heart and soul on the line, a philanthropist, a good person, a great teammate, someone that doesn't get enough credit. But I think him falling short of the championships and maybe some other accolades that he may or may not be able to achieve for the rest of his career, being that he's getting up there, he's 35. Guys start kind of diminishing as they get older. I don't know. I think he's always going to be unfortunately in Jordan's shadow, and maybe even Kobe to a degree. But really, I mean, he's an anomaly, and you don't see guys come around like this ever. I mean, he's a once in a century type player, and I think it's a shame because I think had he won more championships, he's clearly far and away would be the greatest of all time. But I grew up watching Jordan too, and Jordan was especially just did something. He had intangibles that maybe, you know, I don't want to say LeBron lacks, but he's a different personality type. You know what I mean? But I think he's amazing, and I'd like to see him get closer in titles.
Yeah, no, that would certainly help. That would certainly help his legacy. I don't know. I look at LeBron and I think, when you compare him to Michael, I think that in a lot of ways, I kind of find myself liking LeBron more. I think that LeBron's a guy who's been kind of vilified. His public image has kind of been drugged through the dirt, and I feel like it mostly centers around the decision still. And it's a thing that I think we need to get past. Cleveland needs to recognize it was the best thing that happened for him, and they need to recognize that he's their hometown guy. He regrets the way he did it, but I think we all know it was the best thing. I think he's been outspoken about social issues. He's been outspoken and involved with a lot of different organizations. He's a businessman. He's an executive producer for music. He's funny. He goes on Saturday Night Live. I find him just a likable guy.
I
He's out there
agree.
raising money for even when he left Cleveland. He still kept giving money to the building schools. This is just a good guy. I don't really.
He's a really good guy. Doesn't treat teammates like shit.
I don't get the hate for this guy. I think really if it's all talking about the decision, it's a guy decided to leave in free agency. I think it's maybe time for people to get over this. This is the guy who's the face of the NBA. And how lucky is the NBA to have him as the face of them? I
Absolutely. I
can't
mean,
say enough good things about the guy. Really, he's never been involved in a scandal. He's a family man. Like this is the dream athlete for any kind of league to have representing him. Every league should be so lucky.
everyone who has befriended him says he's a great friend, great neighbor. Like he's the kind of guy you want to spend time with and hang out with. Like he's comes off like a normal guy, and he's a philanthropist and he gives back. Like I agree. I think the treatment of him is
And
so
he
unfair.
and he's
And I
willing
think
to stand up
I
for
think
social
he's fine.
issues, and like he's willing to take that stand, and if for something he believes in, like good for him. He should, like that's if you're not using that platform, the platform he has, it's I think it's almost irresponsible. I think that's something that Michael gets away with just because he's Michael. Michael never took a stand, and he had a platform that he could have really affected real change. And LeBron is aware of his platform and is using it. I think that's it's the
Everybody likes the
only
bad boy.
responsible thing to do. I think.
Everybody likes the bad boy. You know what I mean? The good guy never gets nice guys always finish last. Good guy never gets credit. I agree with you 100%. I think this guy's been unfairly looked upon, treated, criticized. I think when it's all said and done, I mean, if you looked at them as a whole, I mean, if you were to build a team around them both in their prime, I mean, how it's hard not to argue for LeBron James. I mean, 6'9" to 6'6", 250, runs like a cheetah to 215 and runs well. Could defend just as well, could play every position. I think he would
You
have
know,
slowed Michael down.
I think the debate continues to rage on. I think we have to wrap it up here, and we knowing the fact that this debate's not over. Who's the greatest is going to continue on, but I think you couldn't do better in as the face of the NBA than LeBron James or the face
I
of
I
the NFL, the NHL, Major League Baseball. They all wish they had a LeBron James to represent them. So, I think on that note, we're going to call it. This has been another greatest game never played.